Yes, muddling through grief. Shirley was going to speak today. Her first email to me saying she wouldn't be here today is just so pragmatic. I loved it. She emailed me, I'm sure, because she knew I needed to know that she wouldn't be here this Sunday for the sermon and probably the next Sunday when she's scheduled to lay lead. It reminded me of when Dad died. When Dad died, I rested my grief on the presence of things that need doing. Well, I can't know the mental state when she wrote, but her pragmatism made me think of that. She wrote the next day telling me that she was just 2 paragraphs short of finishing her sermon. She could finish it, she said, and someone else could give it. No, I told her, but I thanked her. The sermon she writes should be given by her. She can give it another time. Don't worry, I said, we got it covered. So, this is the cover. You get me. Shirley planned to do a program of poetry, so I thought I'd give you that. But of course, poems of my own choosing. I've collected for you 6 poems on grief to honor the grief that Shirley and Charlie are experiencing and will be experiencing for some time. I conceived of a sermon with grief as a theme first, something I'd wanted to do, but then I imagined how what I'd like to say would be best conveyed by poetry. Any other way, I was afraid, would sound like I was presenting a research paper on grief. I don't know any more about grief than any of you, so anything I told you would be something that I just read but didn't really know deeply. I know grief deeply, but I don't know about it deeply. Advice? Well, best I've got is the refrain from the classic children's book, Going on a Lion Hunt. Can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it, gotta go through it. That's all I got. But who's got more? I don't think any of us. That's why I think when someone we know is grieving a death, they'll hear over and over again, whether it's heartfelt or not, and more often than not it is, I'm sorry for your loss. I have no advice other than the refrain above. But a program of poetry could be like a tour of grief. Look, this is what a poet wrote upon the loss of a lover. And over here, this is what a poet wrote after her daughter was murdered. Oh, and here, this... Get the idea. Only one of the poems I've selected suggests a lesson about grief. The others are all personal. I'll start with one of my favorite poems outright, not just favorite one about grief. I first saw this, coincidentally, after a beloved teacher at Lopez High School in Brownsville died playing softball one spring day after school. He was young, but succumbed to a heart attack, and the school was heartbroken. We kind of took a day off when we heard the news. Every time I experience loss, I think of this very simple poem, and it is entitled Poem by Langston Hughes. I loved my friend. He went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends soft as it began. I loved my friend. I love that it says so little, but my opinion says all that needs to be said. I loved my friend. Now my friend is gone. I still love my friend. The next poem is by the mother of a murdered daughter, adult daughter. She was murdered in her apartment by a shunned love interest. Her mom had warned her about him, made her promise to spend the night away from her apartment. The daughter said she would, but didn't. No lesson there, right? Well, that's not what the poet intended, a lesson in that. She said so in a Fresh Air interview. It just was something that came up. The poet, Kathleen Sheeter Bonanno, wrote a book of poems surrounding this event. The book is called Slamming Open the Door. She said she had to. She could write nothing else until she wrote a book about her daughter's death. This poem is called Death Barged In by Kathleen Sheeter Bonanno. In his Russian greatcoat, slamming open the door with an unpardonable bang, and he has been here ever since. He changes everything, rearranges the furniture, his hand hovers by the phone. He will answer now, he says. He will be the answer. Tonight, he sits down to dinner at the head of the table as we eat, mute. Later, he climbs into bed with us, between us. Even as I sit here, he stands behind me, clamping two colossal hands on my shoulders, and bends down and whispers to my neck, "From now on, you write about me." When I've lost someone, and always for longer than I expect, grief consumes me. My grief seems to infuse everything I say and do, even if it isn't apparent to others, just as it seems to have done to Bonanno. The wife of poet Donald Hall, poet Jane Kenyon, died of leukemia in 1995. In 1998, he published a book of poems about her illness, her death, and the aftermath. The strength of their love was famous among all who knew them, then to the world through a PBS documentary, A Life Together, then loss. The book is called Without. It's a very personal testament to their love, and so his deep grief upon losing her. I've chosen two poems from this book. The first is one of a series of letters that he wrote in poetry, in poet form, to his late wife. Letter for Independence Day, Donald Hall. 5 a.m., the 4th of July, I walk by Eagle Pond with the dog, wearing my leather coat against the clear early chill. I'm looking at what water lilies that clutch cool yellow fists together as I undertake another day, 12 weeks after the Tuesday we learned that you would die. This afternoon I'll pay bills and write a friend about her book and watch Red Sox baseball. I'll walk Gussie again. I'll microwave some Stofers. A woman will drive from Bristol to examine your mother's Ford, parked beside your Saab in the dead women's used car lot. Tonight, the Andover fireworks will have to go on without me. As I go to bed early, reading The Man Without Qualities with insufficient attention. Because I keep watching you die. Tomorrow, I will wake at 5 to the 10th Wednesday after the Wednesday we buried you. Grief has slowly grown tendrils into the poet, connecting itself in ways that prohibit its ever being disconnected. Next, a shorter poem from the same collection, Without, by Donald Hall, The Gallery. Back home from the grave, behind my desk I made a gallery of Janes. At 24, with long straight hair, sitting beside me in my Pittsburgh pirate suit. Standing recessive in shadow, wearing her nearsighted glasses, Kearsarge behind us. Stretched out glamorous in her bathing suit at Key West. Foxy and beautiful at 45, embracing me last year. Front page of the Sunday Concord Monitor. Poet Jane Kenyon dies at her home in Wilmot. The next poem I want to share by a different poet, Bad News in the ER, is by someone who's witnessed lots of tragic death. She's a professor at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, Emily Ferrara. The poem is written in the voice of a parent whose son collapsed at a concert. The doctor tries to say the right thing, but there is no right thing to say. Bad News in the ER by Emily Ferrara. The serious young doctor started the story at the beginning. Your son was at a concert when he collapsed. Can I see him? An ambulance was called. EMTs started CPR. Where is he? They tried to revive him but got no response. Please! They brought him here. We worked a long time. Oh, God! We didn't want to give up. He was so young. I searched the doctor for sorrow, found a stoic earnestness. He ended with an apology. I'm so sorry, he said, as if he'd hurt my feelings, as if I could forgive him. The last poem I have is the one with a lesson, though it's gently delivered. 3 things, the poet says, we must be able to do in this life to live in this world. The last is to let go when the time comes of what or whom we love. In Blackwater Woods by Mary Oliver. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go. To let it go. To live in this life, 3 things. Love what is mortal, to hold who is loved tight, and to let that person go when it's time. That's Oliver's prescription. It's gently given and not requiring anything any of us don't do already, but it gives us focus on those things. I hope you got something out of these poems. Again, I didn't want to be prescriptive. I don't know any more than you do. I let Mary Oliver take that job. I didn't want to disrespect you, which being prescriptive would require of me. You know as much as I do about grief, and none of us knows much. We fumble, we fall, we get up, we fumble some more, and we hope one day we can stand upright again. I hope these poems, the recollections of them, or just parts of them, will give you solace when you need it, knowing that others go through the grief swamp too. I've included the names of the poems and their authors in the order of service. Many times I've heard something read in our services that I wanted to look up later, but either I forget the name of it or I didn't catch what the name was when the reader said it. Message or text me if you'd like for me to send them to you. Peace and amen.